What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good day. I just wanted to put this video out to apologize for not dropping a breakdown video on YouTube last week. Last week was one of the first weeks in a really long time where I didn't have time to put a video out. And the reason why I didn't have time to put out a YouTube video last week is just because last week's UFC card, in my opinion, was the best event of the year for betting. Now, that in itself is obviously not the reason why I didn't put out a YouTube video. I would have loved to have released a YouTube video for, in my opinion, the best event of the year for betting. But because this was the best event of the year for betting, it was a really time-consuming fight card to research, to the point where if we come over to my website, literally I did research the Charles Johnson versus Jake Hadley fight in the end, but I didn't get to it until literally like an hour or two before the UFC event actually started. So I was like crazy busy all last week, and it can be pretty time consuming to put out YouTube videos. By the time you mess around with the description, the thumbnail, all that kind of stuff, it just, last week was one of those weeks where these fights were so time consuming to research. And if you guys follow football, you'll also know we're at the business end of the football season, where there's just loads of football to bet at the moment. We've got like Champions League knockout games. So many major leagues around Europe are coming to the final stages of their season. We've got playoff games, tournament finals. It's crazy on football at the moment. And as you guys know, football betting is a really big part of what I do these days. We make a profit, almost every month. So yeah, football's a pretty big deal for me. So football, on top of, in my opinion, the best event we've had for betting in a really long time, just meant last week I was crazy busy, so I didn't have time to put out a YouTube video. But it did turn out to be my biggest winning night of the year, and my biggest winning night in a long time. I worked really hard last week, put loads of time into the research, and the bets I ended up having was a bet on Ribovics, who obviously won, a bet on Buckley, who won, a bet on Woodson, who won, a bet on Carlos Diego Ferreira, which was my biggest underdog winner in a really long time, and a bet on the over 1.5 rounds of the Despania versus Waldo Cortez Acosta fight. It was also my biggest winning night in UFC live betting in a while. And yeah, man, if you just look at my football betting group, I mean, we have been busy boys. I'll just keep scrolling. This is only for May. Like, as you can see, we've been doing a lot of work on football. Busy. A lot of work. So when we have, this amount of football, and you also have, the best event for UFC betting as well, it is, it's a lot of work. So just wanted to apologize for not dropping a video last week. I'll do my absolute best to get a video out this week. And if ever I don't have time to drop a video on YouTube, just know that I always, I've never missed, I always put breakdown videos out for every single fight on every single UFC card on my website. Here's last week's videos. There's the Hardy, Waters, Pennington, Ribovics, Hooper, Cortez Acosta, Woodson, Ulberg, Ruziboev, Buckley, Nascimento, Lewis. So all these videos are on my website, but it's a lot more time consuming to get a video out on YouTube than it is on my website. On my website, I can literally just hit record, throw it straight on the website. With YouTube, you have to mess around with tags, descriptions, thumbnails, all that kind of stuff. I just didn't have time for that last week. So if ever you want any videos, any breakdowns for any fights that aren't on YouTube, you can get them on my website. And what I'm going to do now is play all the breakdown videos from all my bets last week. So if you're interested in the reason why I placed each of these bets, you go watch them now. So I'll be back in a couple of days with a breakdown video for this weekend's card, and hopefully we can do well and make some more money this weekend. Hopefully we can keep this nice winning run going. And yeah, hope you have a great week. Love you all. Take care. I'll see you all soon. Here's the first breakdown for Buckley versus Ruziboev. What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good day. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the fight between Joaquin Buckley and the Sultan Ruziboev. So before we get into this breakdown, I know I've said this in a few other videos this week, but I'm just trying to get it in at the beginning of the videos, which I think people are most likely to watch, because I don't think many people will watch all my breakdown videos in a week. So I just wanted to apologise that these breakdown videos this week are uploaded a lot later than usual. Every once in a while, we just run into a UFC card, which is extra time consuming to research. Some cards just take forever to work through, and this card is one of those cards. It is a good thing because, generally speaking, whenever you've got a card that is very time consuming to research, it just means that we've got loads of interesting complex fights for betting which take longer for me to work through. And a sign of how different this week's card is to most cards we get is that we've actually got 3 pre-fight bets this week, which I can't remember the last time we had 3 pre-fight bets on a card, which should kind of indicate to you that this week's card is very, very good and this week's card is very, very different. So I just want to apologise that breakdown videos are up late, but it's one of those things where, for me, the bets are always the most important thing, and then breakdown videos are like a secondary thing. They're like a luxury. For me, the priority is doing the research, trying to find the bets, trying to get our money into strong positions, and then I can focus on the breakdown videos, you know, once the majority of fights are done. So yeah, I just wanted to go through that with you. Really, really sorry. I've taken a look at next week's card. Next week's card is more of like a normal card, and so everything should be back to normal next week. So let's take a look at the odds on Buckley versus Ribovics, and obviously I've recommended a bet on Buckley, and his odds have actually improved a bit since I recommended the bet, which is very, very nice. Doesn't happen very often. And I've got to be honest with you, I'm not saying Buckley will win this weekend. I'm not super confident in Buckley, which is why I've only recommended a 1-unit bet on him. But what I will say is, when I see odds movement like this, where Buckley opens as a favourite and then his odds just continually improve, what this says to me is that a bunch of people have bet this fight and moved the odds, and they haven't researched it at all. I think a bunch of people have looked at Ribovics' beard, where he's from, and made a lot of assumptions about his capabilities without actually looking into his strengths and weaknesses as a fighter. And I'm going to show you some video footage in this breakdown which will probably shock you, because you're probably looking at this guy thinking, you know, he's from Uzbekistan, got a base in combat sambo, he's got a beard, you know, he's absolutely huge for the division. Why the hell would Allsop be recommending a bet on Buckley? This just doesn't make any sense. But I promise you, by the end of this breakdown video, it's going to make a lot of sense, and you'll be rushing to your betting site to place some money on Buckley, because this bet is an absolute no-brainer. Like I say, it doesn't mean Buckley will win, but the value is absolutely undeniable here, in my opinion. So if we take a look at the odds, we can see that Buckley's around about a 1.74 favourite, which is going to be minus 135 for an implied probability of 57%. If we take a look at the odds on Ribovics, he's around an average of 2.10, which is going to be plus 110 for an implied probability of 48%. So Buckley is 30 years old, 5'10", with a 76-inch reach. Ribovics, 30 years old, 6'5". We don't know what his reach is. I'm assuming he's got a decent reach advantage over Buckley, though. And obviously, with this being 5'10" versus 6'5", you know, with Ribovics being absolutely huge for a welterweight, big, abnormally tall, the size difference between these two could be absolutely comedic in this fight. I would imagine at the ceremonial weigh-ins, Ribovics is probably going to tower over Buckley. But just like we spoke about in last week's breakdown video between Barboza and Caracate, there's strengths and weaknesses to every body type. So while generally speaking it is always best to have a size advantage over your opponent, I do think with anything in life it can reach a point of diminishing returns, and I think 6'5" in the welterweight division might be the point of diminishing returns. On top of that, this is also Ribovics' first fight at welterweight in the UFC. His last 2 fights have been at middleweight, and if we go back through his record, you can see that the majority of his fights are at middleweight. Hasn't fought a welterweight in about 3 years. So it'll be very interesting to see what his weight cut is like. I can't imagine it's going to be easy for someone that is 6'5" to make the 171-pound limit, which also is a reason to like Buckley in this fight, because if you look at Ribovics's record, what you notice is pretty much all of his fights have ended very quick, right? Round one, 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 round one. You've got to go all the way back to 2019, 4.5 years ago, for the last time that he went to a decision. And we'll play you some footage of that fight. Look, total shit. And what you'll notice about this guy is he does lose a lot of decisions. He's one of these guys that either seems to get the job done early, or he fades and looks pretty shit, which is exactly what's happened in these fights. And it's not like he's facing killers. This guy's got a record of 8-4, 6-0, 18-11. Point being, Ribovics is one of these guys that looks great early, but if he doesn't get the job done early, tends to fade pretty hard in round 2 and look like shit. And obviously we know Buckley has got a good gas tank. He could really put a pace on you for 3 rounds. So if we think about it logically, Ribovics doesn't have much experience going past round 1. The last time he went past round 1 was 4.5 years ago. And this is his first fight in a long time where he's got to cut down to welterweight. That weight cut's going to be pretty brutal. I actually think there's a pretty good chance Ribovics will miss weight this weekend, because 6'5" is outrageous for a welterweight. And so I think if Buckley can make it through the first round, I think there's a pretty good chance Ribovics will fade very hard and look shit in rounds 2 and 3. I can't be sure. We're in the era of, barely any performance-enhancing drug testing in the UFC. Maybe Ribovics will come in juiced to the gills, look incredible, way better takedown offense than usual, amazing cardio. Maybe he's the next champ, a future champ. Maybe he's an absolute beast. But that certainly doesn't look to be the case based on past performances. So let's go through how these two match up stylistically. So in terms of how they match up when it comes to striking, this is a fight where I don't have a particularly strong read on it when it comes to striking, because Ribovics looks like he moves reasonably well on the feet. He's really tall and he's got a huge reach, which is obviously going to make life very difficult for Buckley. And the thing about Buckley is he's very wild and reckless on the feet. He's not the best defensively. He does get dinged. We've seen him get rocked, wobbled, dropped multiple times in his UFC career. And there's no denying Ribovics is very dangerous on the feet. He's a big, scary fighter. True, legit knockout power in every limb on his body. If you look at his record, the amount of wins that he does have, due to strikes, he's a scary dude. He is a scary dude. There is no denying that. What is interesting, though, is a lot of his wins over the last few years you can see by submission. And these are very, very interesting, because look at the records of the guys he's been submitting. 20-25, 10-8, 20-10, 13-4, 12-12. So what I will say about this guy is, I do think the reason for the odds movement is people just haven't done their homework on this guy. I think they've wiki-capped the fuck out of this fight. I think they're looking at this guy, combat sambo background, beard, from Uzbekistan, big and scary, big size advantage over Buckley. They scan his record. Oh, he's got loads of wins by submission. He must be pretty good. And I just don't think they've taken time out of their day to actually look at Ribovics' strengths and weaknesses and how they match up. So I'm about to show you some pretty shocking stuff, and I think you're going to like Buckley a lot in this fight when you see it. So Ribovics is one of these guys that he's big and scary on the feet for sure. he could cause Buckley big problems on the feet. I don't have a strong feeling on this fight on the feet. But Ribovics has one huge weakness in his skill set that I think Buckley is pretty well positioned to exploit. Now, I'm not sure if you guys watched Buckley on the Joe Rogan Experience, but Buckley is a guy who's taken his career very, very seriously. He wants to be the champion, and he's a very intelligent guy. He studies the fight game, he does a lot of research on his opponents, and I believe quite strongly that Buckley will have done his homework on Ribovics. Judging by the things he said on the Joe Rogan Experience, the Joe Rogan podcast, I think Buckley will know what his path to victory are in this fight. And I think if Buckley fights smart, he has a very, very high probability of winning this fight. To the extent that the only ways I think that Ribovics will win this fight, Ribovics got 3 ways of winning. First way, just catching Buckley with a big shot and knocking him out. Can happen in every fight though. If you're worried about that, you probably shouldn't be betting on cage fighting, because that's just the thing in every fight. Second way Ribovics could win this fight is if he's made big improvements to his takedown defense, because it's awful, and I'll show you some footage in a moment. That's possible. We saw Ferreira made huge improvements to her takedown defense last week against Barboza compared to her past performances, so that can happen. The third way is if Buckley tries to win a stand-up fight and doesn't grapple. But as we know, Buckley is very much evolved into a fighter who mixes things up a lot these days. He won his last fight through ground and pound. Yeah, we've seen him incorporate a lot more grappling into his game plans in recent fights. He's becoming more of a complete, well-rounded, strategic fighter. For that reason, I'm quite optimistic that Buckley will grapple in this fight, and when he does, I think he'll have a lot of success. So, that's basically the reason why I think Buckley is a very good bet. Despite Ribovics' appearance and where he's from in the world, and how many submissions he's got on his record, his ground game is an actual joke. It's pathetic. It's so bad. And I think if Buckley comes in with a grappling heavy game plan, he'll take Ribovics down pretty easily and dominate him. So let's show some footage. Let's check out this fight against Pavel Mazalski. Let's take a look. So I'll fire this up. Here we go. So this fight was from about 2 years ago. So again, like with Ferreira last week, it is possible that he could have improved a lot. And if his takedown defense has improved a lot, it's obviously a difficult fight for Buckley. But if it hasn't improved a lot, and I think Buckley gives him hell. So just skip through, because we really want to focus on the wrestling. So obviously Ribovics in the white shorts. One thing we've got to mention, we've got to just cover the size, which I haven't gone through. Haven't really spoken about the impact of size on this fight. So just like when we bet Dione Barboza last week against Ferreira, the thing with this fight is, it is always a good, for the most part, it's always a good thing to have a size advantage over your opponent. However, when you're abnormally tall for the division, generally speaking, you're weaker in the lower body. You get the odd unicorn like a John Jones, but generally speaking, when you're abnormally long and tall for the division, you're weaker in the lower body, which makes it easier to take you down. If you think of like James Vick, Jalen Turner, Stefan Struve, all these abnormally long and tall fighters, if you shoot takedowns deep in on their legs, it's usually pretty easy to upset their balance and take them down. And then they're also very, very weak off their back. So they just don't have the strength in their legs to work their way back up to their feet. It's a trend we see play out over and over and over and over again, right? So, this is one of those situations where with Ribovics being 6'5" and Buckley being 5'10", even though it will make life harder for Buckley on the feet, because it'll be harder for him to get inside and land his strikes, it'll make it easier for Buckley to grapple, because Ribovics' hips are so much higher than your average fighter that when Buckley does shoot those deep double leg takedown entries, naturally, because of the height difference, he's going to be shooting in deep on the legs and hips of Ribovics, which should make it easier for him to take Ribovics down. And we'll just show you some of his takedown offense here. Remember, this guy he's fighting is 12-12. So nice little double leg entry there, and then you can just see Ribovics falls over. Now you guys know me, it's not a deal breaker if a guy has bad takedown defense, but if a guy's very, very weak off his back, basically it's not a deal breaker for me if a fighter has got bad takedown defense, as long as they can quickly work their way back up to their feet. What is a deal breaker for me is when you're like Ribovics and you're very, very weak off your back. And we can see here, he's very, very weak off his back. Just goes to guard and just starts basically lying on his back. One thing I've noticed about Ribovics in a lot of his fights, he tries to use his length and his leverage to hit reversals off like Kimuras and armbars and stuff off his back. But this is against pretty low level fighters. Guys like Buckley should be able to do with that, especially because he's so physically strong from top position. He should be able to stay heavy and tight from top position, just beat Ribovics up from top position. I'm not saying Ribovics can't catch Buckley with an armbar or a Kimura off his back, but like this setup, when you see Ribovics turning his hips in, really telegraphing the armbar, telegraphing the fact that he's looking for an arm, a higher level fighter should be able to, read these warning signs and shut that shit down. And the best way to do that would be to pass Ribovics guard, move into half guard so that he can't use his legs anymore to generate the leverage he would need to get a Kimura or an armbar. So as you can see, Ribovics just telegraphing the armbar attempt, man. He's been telegraphing it for a while now. But the guy's 12-12. He didn't read it. And as a result, Ribovics locks it in. And gets the submission. And like I say, look, I'm not saying he can't do that to Buckley. But for me, decent level UFC fighters shouldn't be getting caught in submissions like this. Ribovics' takedown offense, very bad. And he looked very weak off his back there. So now let's look at his fight before that, which was against a guy called Luciano Contini. So let's take a look at this one. So we'll skip through. Doesn't last very long. Here we go. Here we go. So again, gives up a very cheap takedown. This time jumps on that Kimura, gets it. Again, decent level UFC fighters should not be getting caught with shit like that. Now let's take a look at the fight against Edward Arustamian. Probably butchered the pronunciation of that. Don't actually have that fight. Okay, let's take a look at Alex De Paula. We do have that. Let's take a look. Alright. Have I missed any grappling? Not really. Here we go. Okay. So obviously, Ribovics, this dude here in the red gloves. Just make sure this is recording. It is, yeah. Here we go. Alright, here we go. So nice takedown entry there. Again, Ribovics gives up very, very cheap takedown. And again, just pay attention to his body language off his back. Just looks very, very weak off his back straight away. Mount is there all day for De Paula. I mean, Ribovics just looking super weak off his back here. I mean, Mount is there all day if he wants it. He'd be vulnerable to a reversal if he goes for it. But you could just see that Ribovics is at a very, very low level on the ground, which I know is uncharacteristic for guys from this part of the world. But you can just see De Paula moving him around from top position easily, handling him from top position. Then you can see he takes Mount. And we're dealing with low level guys here, but Ribovics just kind of bucks him off, gets back up. Very, very nice. But you could just see Ribovics very easy to take down. Very, very weak off his back. And you've got to remember, if Buckley does use grappling in this fight, Ribovics is one of these fighters that doesn't have much experience going past round one. So he will tire out, he will slow down. So he looks great on the feet for sure, this is all good. But he's not going to be able to use this striking if Buckley puts him on his back. So then again, you can see here, De Paula shoots another takedown. Ruziboev just falls over, and again, very, very weak off his back. Just goes to this guard position, and again starts hunting for an arm. Very obvious he's hunting for an arm here, trying to turn his hips in, looking for an arm bar. Very weak off his back. De Paula very comfortable here. So like the setups are so slow and obvious. Look how he's turning his hips in on trying to attack the arm here. So slow. Look at this. Look at this setup. Look how slow this is. Like, it's so obvious what Ruziboev is trying to do, but so many of his past opponents have run into it, and he's won by Kimura or armbar. But he's so weak off his back, man. So very weak off his back. I mean, look at how De Paula's passing his guard there. Loses a scramble, now he's on the bottom. Big old Uzbekistani on top of him is not ideal. And I mean, again, he kind of makes a mistake there. He could easily have lost that scramble and end up on the bottom again when De Paula went for the leg lock. So you can see Ruziboev very low level on the ground, and then he just kind of rolls over, plays dead. One more clip for you. We are now going to take a look at the last time that Ruziboev went past round 1. You've got to go all the way back to 2019 for this. And obviously, very likely that Ruziboev has improved a lot since this fight. A lot can change in that space of time, right? However, when you look at his more recent fights, the ones we've just taken a look at, you know, this one, this one, you can see that the weaknesses that he demonstrates in this fight on the ground with his takedown defense, they appear to still be there as of, you know, 3 fights ago. So it's possible that, you know, he might have the best takedown defense in the UFC now. Who knows? But all we can do is make the best decision possible with the information we've got available. So here we go. So Ruziboev in the blue gloves. Catches a kick, gets his own takedown there. Going to be seeing a lot of bad takedown defense in this fight because obviously Miroshnichenko gave up the takedown very easily. We're focusing more on Ruziboev's takedown defense and ground game in this. So here we go. But again, I'm just skipping through because we all know he's a beast on the feet. There's no denying that. We're focusing on his grappling here so that this breakdown video doesn't become super long. So he jumps in on a single leg and just kind of falls to the ground, pulls guard, and just hunts for a Kimura. He loves the Kimuras, he loves the arm bars. But like I say, it's easy to catch these low-level guys in these positions, but how often do you see someone get submitted with a Kimura in the UFC? Very, very rare. UFC level fighters should not be getting caught with Kimuras. But he's fallen in love with this and he's committing hard to it. But doesn't get it. And they're back up. And then you can see he gives up a very cheap takedown here. Which literally falls over. Straight into side control and mounted. This guy's awful on the ground. Awful, 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 awful. So again, I don't want to make this breakdown super long. You could obviously go watch this fight yourself if you want, you know, to watch the fight in more detail. We'll just skip through. You see Ruziboev just weak off his back. Won the scrap. You know, he hit a reversal off his back. He could generate a lot of leverage with his long legs, that's for sure. But doesn't take long before he gets taken down again, like literally a minute later. And you can already see tired body language from him here. After this exchange, look at his body language. Takes a big deep breath. There, looking very sloppy spinning back fist. I think this is going to be one of those guys where he might knock Buckley out early. He might catch him with a crazy armbar or something early. But if he doesn't get Buckley out of there in the first 3-4 minutes, I think he's going to start to struggle very bad. You see here, just again, flops to his back. Immediately mounted. Again, uses long legs, his leverage to hit a reversal. But UFC level guys shouldn't be getting caught with this shit. So now into round 2. Again, gives up a very cheap takedown. Again, just basically falls over. Hunting for the Kimura. And again, just this time, now that the thing is, when you hit a reversal off your back, when you use those long legs to hit reversals, it takes a lot of energy. So it's going to be difficult to control Ribovics early because he's big, like we were saying with Derek Lewis. He's big and strong, so he can just kind of use his body type, his leverage to just power out of certain positions with poor technique. But the longer the fight goes, the more tired he becomes. He's not going to have the energy to do that. And that's when he'll become a lot easier to beat in the scramble or hold down and control. And you can really see that here because he tries to hit a reversal here. Where is it? Yeah, he tries to hit a reversal here. And this time he doesn't have the energy to win the scramble. He loses the scramble and gets flattened back out. So again, I don't want this breakdown to be super long. So I'm just going to skip through. And you can just see Ribovics very, very weak off his back. He gets mounted again. And now again, you see it here where he tries to hit the same reversal. The reversal was working so well for him in round 1, but now he just doesn't have the energy to do it. So he just gets absolutely smashed from from mount. He does recharge his batteries a bit, summon the energy to hit that reversal. It's very nice. But again, UFC level fighters should not be getting caught like that. Then he just falls into a triangle. Just looked very, very low level on the ground. Tries to slam out of it. Loses the scramble. Winds up on the bottom again. So this guy just looks very, 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 very bad on the ground. He gets mounted again easily. And then into round 3. Again, cheap takedown. Just falls over. Then just very, very weak on the ground. We'll skip through. Just holding on from the bottom. Just getting smashed. Mounted again. Now he doesn't have the energy to win these scrambles, so every time he comes close to scrambling out of there, he just gets flattened back out. And ultimately just gets dominated. He eventually does, manage to scramble out of this position. Falls into a triangle. Again, really slow triangle setup. He damn near helps his opponent lock that up. So slow. Very, very low level on the ground. Back up, back up, back up. 45 seconds left to go. Ankle pick, takedown again. Very, very, very bad. And I know Buckley is primarily a striker, but I just think that when you're as bad on the ground as Ribovics is, when your takedown defense is that bad, Buckley would be a fool not to try and exploit that. And I think this is a very, very easy fight for Buckley if he grapples, just so long as Ribovics hasn't made significant improvements to his takedown defense and ground game. But like I say, 3 fights ago against Mazalski, there's clues that his ground game is still pretty bad. So on the feet, I don't have a super strong read on it. I would imagine Buckley will struggle early to get inside the length and reach of Ribovics, but then Ribovics might start to tire in rounds 2 and 3, and then Buckley can have a lot more success. So on the feet, could go either way, but if Buckley comes in with a grappling heavy game plan, I think he gives Ribovics absolute hell. So at the end of the day, I'm only going to bet a unit on Buckley because there are some pretty major risk factors. We don't know if Ribovics has improved. We don't know if Buckley will grapple. It's possible Ruziboev could catch Buckley with a big shot and knock him out early. But when you look at the footage I've just showed you, for me, you've got to give Buckley, in my opinion, you know, a 65 to 70% chance of winning this fight, which I think gives us a nice margin of value over where the odds are currently at. I just think this is one of those situations where people have wiki-capped Ruziboev, made some assumptions about him without actually looking into him as a fighter. He looks pretty awful to me. Maybe on Saturday night his takedown offense will look amazing. Saw it with Carricate last week, but he's going to have to have improved a lot. I think my biggest concern is Buckley choosing not to grapple, trying to put on a show and trying to get to 50 Gs and trying to knock Ruziboev out. But if he grapples, which to be fair he's done a lot of in recent fights, I think this will be an easy night's work for him. So that's how I see this fight. Now in terms of the over-under on this one, I would be surprised if the fight went to a decision. We know Buckley is very strategic and cautious and paces himself well, but I think with how aggressive Ruziboev is on the feet and how bad he is on the ground, that's a combination for him either finishing Buckley with a knockout or a crazy armbar or something, or him getting put in positions on the ground where he can't defend himself and he just gets smashed with ground and pound. So the over is set at over under 1.5 rounds. I do think the fight will more than likely go over 1.5 rounds, but I don't think it'll go to a decision. What I actually think is Buckley could probably tire Ruziboev out and get a finish late on. So in terms of the props, Buckley by submission, absolute no-brainer. I had to check the odds there. Like, is this? Am I actually seeing this? Now look, do I think Buckley by submission is the most likely outcome? No. Do I think Buckley by submission is likely to hit? No. But when you've got a guy like Ruziboev who has such a low-level ground game, there's always a chance he can be submitted, and a decent chance, to be fair. Now, he hasn't been submitted in a very, very, very long time. You got to go back 8 years for the last time he was submitted. But he hasn't been fighting a particularly high level of opponent either. And I know Buckley will probably favour ground and pound if he puts Ruziboev in a bad position on the ground. For sure. The odds are, you know, it's more likely that Buckley would win by knockout, TKO, or even decision. But the odds aren't great on either of those things. The odds on Buckley by submission are kind of insane. Because what these odds say average odds of 22.0. That gives an implied probability of about 5%, right? 4.5%. Are you telling me, after what I've just shown you, that Buckley only has a 5% chance of submitting this guy? I think it's closer to 10, 15, 20%. Maybe even higher with how bad he's looked on the ground. And like I say, I know Buckley will probably favour the smash. He will probably favour the ground and pound. But he might also think, do you know what? I want to make a statement by submitting this guy. And I think he's capable of doing it. So a bet like this isn't going to win a super high percentage of the time. But it doesn't need to when you're talking about bets in this odds range. And I'm actually going to bet that myself. Max bet limits will probably be very low. But that is a bit of a steal. And again, what these odds say to me is people are wiki capping this fight. And they have no idea how bad Ruziboev is on the ground. Another prop, actually. There might be another prop on this one. I mean, you can get crazy, right? Buckley by submission in round 3 when Ruziboev's too tired to defend himself. That's another prop. Fight ends in round 3. I like that. Fight ends in round 3. I like that. I do like that. Fight ends in round... Oh, sorry. Fight ends by submission in round 3. I misread it. Let's just find the standard fight ends in round 3. Fight ends in round 3. The odds aren't so great on that. Why is there 2 of the same bet? I don't know. Those odds aren't as good. Oh, there's 3 different sets of odds for the same bet. I don't really know what's going on here. If the odds on fight ends in round 3 on your betting site are like 10.0 plus 900, I like that. Any lower, I wouldn't bother. So I hope you found that useful. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good day. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the fight between Diego Ferreira and Mateusz Rebecki. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Rebecki is the favourite at average odds of around 1.20, which is going to be minus 500 for an implied probability of 83%. If we take a look at the odds on Ferreira, he's around an average of 4.75, which is going to be plus 375 for an implied probability of 21%. So Ferreira is 39 years old, 5'9", with a 74-inch reach. Rebecki, 31 years old, 5'7", with a 66-inch reach. So straight off the bat, I want to say I do think Diego Ferreira is one of the livest underdogs on this card, and potentially a very, very, very difficult fight for Rebecki. I can't bet guys like Ferreira, 39 years old, on a steep decline. You know, has had a lot of injuries throughout his career, has taken a lot of damage, has been in a lot of wars. But skill for skill, I do think Ferreira is significantly better than Rebecki everywhere. The question is whether, you know, Ferreira fits into the age-old trend of old fighters finding ways to lose, or if his skills are enough to get him over the line here and get the win. So obviously, he is 8 years older than Rebecki, and we know that the younger fighter wins, you know, around 67% of the time when there's an 8-year age gap in a fight. So I just don't like to bet against trends like that. We know Rebecki is going to be getting better from fight to fight. He's in his prime. We know Ferreira is going to be getting worse from fight to fight at 39 years old. This is one of those fights where it's not very often you see 39-year-olds beat 31-year-olds. But stylistically, I dare say it's a really good fight for Ferreira. So before we get into talking about how these two match up stylistically, if you do want to bet this fight, it's an absolute no-brainer to bet Ferreira. You would be crazy to bet Rebecki in this odds range. So why is this a good stylistic matchup for Ferreira? Well, let's first of all describe the kind of fighter Rebecki is. So Rebecki is one of these mean, nasty, tough, aggressive pressure fighters. He's a little bit like Billy Goff, who's also competing on this card that we'll talk about in that video, obviously. But Rebecki's one of these guys that is just tough. Not particularly good at anything, but he's a tough guy. He hits hard, he's athletic, he's powerful, he's physically imposing. And he basically looks to use his toughness, his work rate, his durability, his athleticism as a weapon to force you to fight at a pace that very few fighters can keep up with. Because from the first second to the last, he forces you to sprint. And Rebecki slows down a lot as fights wear on. But it's not because he's got bad cardio, it's because he fights at such a high pace. And Rebecki basically banks on you not being able to keep up with the pace that he sets. So that when he does start to slow and get tired, you're more tired than he is. And because he's so tough and just such an absolute dog, when you both get tired, he's the one that's going to be able to dig deep and pull through and find a way to get the win. And he's been incredibly successful doing that up until this point in his career, because he's got an amazingly impressive record of 19-1. He's been very good, very effective with his strategy. I'm sure he will continue to be effective with his strategy. But the problem with this strategy is every once in a while you're going to run into a guy that has got amazing cardio and won't fade under the pressure that you put them under. And then you got problems, because when they're still reasonably capable of doing everything at a decent level, after 8 or 9 minutes, when you force them to sprint and you're absolutely gassed out of your mind because you've been sprinting, well, then you got a real problem on your hand. And Rebecki hasn't really fought anyone like that yet. I think Diego Ferreira could be the first guy that he fights like that. Going back 4 or 5 years, I wouldn't even have hesitated to bet Diego Ferreira. I think he would give Rebecki hell. The only thing that concerns me is his age, and we know these older fighters find ways to lose. And to be fair, he was beating Mateus Gamrot, and then we saw a very strange finish to that fight where he kind of tapped after he got kneed in the ribs. It was very bizarre, but he was beating Mateus Gamrot. So, in terms of how they match up in the tail of the tape, you can see that Ferreira is 5'9" with a 74-inch reach, which gives him a giant 8-inch reach advantage over Rebecki. So while Ferreira is obviously a lot older than Rebecki, he does have a much longer reach. And the statistics around winning with an 8-inch reach advantage are around 67% as well. 67-68%, which is about the same as the age statistics. So as I'm going through this fight, as I'm breaking this down, I'm actually getting very tempted to bet Ferreira, and I might actually bet him. Sometimes this happens where I research a fight and I'm not sure about it, but I've still got all that knowledge burned into my brain from watching both guys fight, and then when I start summarizing my research for you guys in these videos, I end up feeling more confident in a bet or deciding on a bet. I might actually bet Ferreira here. I don't ever bet these beat up old veterans, but the more I think about this fight, the more I think this could actually be hell for Rebecki. So why is this a potentially really difficult fight for Rebecki? Well, I don't think he has an advantage from a technical point of view anyway. I think Diego Ferreira is a significantly better striker and significantly better grappler. Rebecki's one of these guys that likes to come forward, take control of the centre of the octagon, you know, pressure you into fighting in an uncomfortable range and force you to get into big exchanges. But the thing is, Ferreira's a good boxer. I don't think he's ever been knocked out. If we take a look at his record, this wasn't really a knockout, neither was this. He just gassed and faded. Against Gamrot, it was a strange ending to that fight. So yeah, he's only been knocked out once in his career, against Dustin Poirier 9 years ago. So it's one of those fights where Rebecki hits hard, he is aggressive, but Ferreira's not really the kind of guy to worry about being under pressure. He doesn't mind the dogfight, he doesn't mind the brawl, he's a pretty good boxer. Will Rebecki cause him problems early? Probably. I do think Ferreira will struggle to deal with the pressure, the power, the physicality of Rebecki early. But if Ferreira can hang in there, Rebecki, when he starts to fade in the second half of round 2 into the third round, I think Ferreira is likely to be the fresher fighter, and that's where Ferreira can really start to pick Rebecki apart and outstrike him. You know what? I think I'm going to bet Ferreira. I'll show you guys a little bit of video footage to understand where I'm coming from. So, on the feet, I do think Rebecki will have a lot of success early. But in the second half of the fight, there's definitely scope for Ferreira to take over and really start to put it on Rebecki, because he also fights at quite a high pace. He's quite aggressive on the feet. He likes the pressure, so he can really get after Rebecki and make Rebecki pay when Rebecki starts to fade. But on the ground is really where this fight gets dicey for Rebecki, because Rebecki's one of these guys that isn't a particularly skilled grappler. He's one of these guys that is strong and athletic and powerful. So when he grapples, and he does grapple a lot, he tries to take his opponents down a lot, he grapples a lot. But when he grapples, he doesn't do it with the best technique. He does it with just raw power. So he picks guys up and he slams them to the ground, and he tries to like big brother them on the ground. But it's all with power and explosiveness. It's not with particularly good technique. And this is one of the reasons why he fades in fights, because he's doing everything with this raw aggression and power. Diego Ferreira is an ultra high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. Very high level ground game, not as sharp on the ground as he used to be, but in his heyday, think Dione Barboza, think Mackenzie Dern, think Damian Maia, think Rani Yaya, think Alexandre Pantoja, right? He's that kind of level of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu on the ground. He's a nightmare. So, again, Rebecca early might hit some takedowns and get some top control, but if Rebecca is tired and starts trying to take Ferreira down, or tired and tries to mix it up in grappling positions with Ferreira, you're going to see exactly the same thing happen that we saw in last week's main event between Steve Erceg and Alexandre Pantoja, where even when Pantoja was clearly very, 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 very tired, every time Erceg engaged in the grappling with Pantoja, he lost scrambles and ended up in a bad position. Just because these guys like Pantoja, Ferreira, Dern, Maia, Yaya, they're just at such a high level on the ground that if you mix it up with them, it's like a moth to the bug zapper. It's like a fly flying into the spider's web. That's what they want, and they're very, very good at making you pay. Obtaining dominant positions, tying you up, giving you hell. So, I think I'm going to bet Ferreira this week. It's been a long time since I took a shot on a fighter this old. But with the reach, how dangerous he is on the ground, the fact that he doesn't really cave under pressure, how he's tough himself, how he's an absolute dog himself. I think I have to do it. The odds are insane. The odds are insane. So yeah, let's just show you a little bit of Rebecca, right? So what we're going to do is take a look at his UFC debut against Nick Fury. In fact, can't remember. I researched this fight like 3-4 days ago now, so I can't remember specifically if Rebecca was showing signs of slowing in this fight that went into round 2 against Radzhabov. We'll take a quick look at it now, because it's the type of thing I would double check anyway before locking in a bet. So I'll just check with you guys now. Just find this fight. Because obviously he did slow down a lot against Nick Fury, but it could be it was just his UFC debut or something. And obviously if he's got great cardio, that makes this a much tougher fight for Ferreira. But again, all we can do is make the best decision possible with the information we've got available. So yeah, we want to get into round 2, and we'll just look at his body language, his breathing patterns, his movement, all that kind of stuff. Let's just take, as he literally landed a body kick straight off the bat. You see, he's very aggressive. This is how he fights. He literally just stands in front of you and wants to just drag you into a war, and that won't bother Ferreira. To be fair, I won't bother Ferreira. So I'm just looking here at any signs that Rebecca's getting tired, but it's difficult now because Radzhabov is injured, so we're not going to get the best look at Rebecca, because obviously Radzhabov's in a defensive shell now, and of course Rebecca's had a minute to recover in between rounds. You see, it's that big left hand there, comes right back on top of Radzhabov. It's not really showing us a great deal, is it? It's a shame that Radzhabov got so injured at the very beginning of this round, because Rebecca's not being forced to work hard here because he's in total control. Just allowed to dictate the pace. Unfortunate. His last fight ended in round 1. Doesn't tell us a whole lot, unfortunately. Alright, let's take a look. I'm actually doing a live second research session here. So, let's take a look at the Fury fight. Now, I know for sure he slows in this fight. Otherwise, I wouldn't never have considered a bet on Rebecca. So, problem I've got is Alright, a little bit of a problem. I don't have many of his other fights that went deep. I am going to take a look at the ones that I do have again. See how his breathing patterns, body language look deep into the fight. Because that Radzhabov fight doesn't tell us a whole lot. So here we are now in round 2. What we want to do is just come forward a minute. Because obviously Rebecca just had a minute to recover in between rounds 1 and 2. So obviously could have recharged his batteries by the start of round 2, but now we want to see him a little bit into round 2. Take a look at his breathing patterns, his body language. So big deep breath there, big old heavy arms, relatively slow hand speed here as well. And the thing about Ferreira is when Rebecca's taking those big deep breaths and just stood in front of Ferreira, you know, with these sloppy combinations that he's trying to drag Fury into, Ferreira probably won't be that tired by this stage in the fight, and he's a pretty good boxer. Like, look at this sloppiness from Rebecca. Yeah, I've got to bet Ferreira. I've got to bet Ferreira, man. Because in these positions where if he like literally, this is only 1.5 minutes into round 2. If Rebecca is looking this tired and sloppy at this point in the fight, like takedown offense is bad. Like, Ferreira's got fast hands, good cardio, good boxing. He could light Rebecca up in these exchanges. You know, he doesn't look particularly good on the ground. So we're about the midway point in round 2 now. Mouth open wide, big deep breath, sloppiness. And again, let's just see if he took this fight on short notice. Was his UFC debut? Was he one of these guys that like came in on a week's notice or like a few days notice or something? So Fury was okay. So basically, to find out, we need to look at if Fury was scheduled to fight anyone else. He wasn't, so it doesn't look like Rebecca came in on short notice either. In fact, Rebecca was originally scheduled, so it would have been Fury coming in on short notice because Rebecca was scheduled to fight Omar Morales. So I can't be 100% sure that Rebecca didn't take this fight on short notice, but I don't think he would have because he was scheduled to fight someone else. So he would have been in camp and preparing for Omar Morales. Where's he been training? Let's take a look. You're kind of seeing a second research session here, guys. As he trains in Poland. Or maybe not. American Top Team. When was this? 22nd of February. So you'd expect him to have improved. Now training at ATT. That's a bit of a risk factor. But it looks like he's bouncing between a little bit of time at ATT. And then a little bit of time at this gym. Which I know is in Poland. Don't know the name of the gym. Well, actually, that's him. That's an old picture. Maybe he's not in Poland anymore. 16th of March, so 2 months ago he would have been at ATT. So yeah, he will have improved, obviously, moving to ATT. Let's look into this second round. You just see he looks so tired and sloppy here, man. You won't get this from Ferreira. Look how tired and sloppy he is. Big deep breaths. And again, like if you take down a guy like Carlos Diego Ferreira, he's just going to cause you problems on the ground most likely, unless he's declined real bad. So there you could see Rebecca was getting tired, and then he used that takedown to alleviate. You know, I'm not going to say he was in trouble on the feet, but obviously he was very, very tired. So he took the fight down and put himself in a position where he didn't have to stand and strike very tired. And again, it's a big combination there, looking very sloppy. Again, same shit. Nice drive on the takedown, but the thing is, like I say, Diego Ferreira is not going to be worried about the ground game. He's a very, very high level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. So what I'm going to do now, before we just scroll through, or actually not, let's finish off with Rebecca, right? And then if I want to bet Ferreira, I'll show you a little bit of footage of Ferreira in his fight against Gamrot in round 2, so you can kind of see how he could potentially cause Rebecca some big problems here. So, let's take a look at some other fights that might give us clues as to Rebecca's cardio. So, let's take a look. What have I got? So I've got this one, but ended too quick. Won't tell us much. I don't have this one, unfortunately. It's not available online. I do have this one. So let's take a look at this. So again, we're focusing on Rebecca's cardio, because if he's got, you know, great cardio for 3 rounds, I think he beats Ferreira. But if he starts to slow in round 2 like he did against Fury, I think Ferreira has got a really good chance of winning this fight. Because typically speaking, Ferreira's cardio is really good. Alright. So he definitely looks fresher here than he did in the round 2 of the Fury fight. That is for damn sure. You know, way faster hand speed. No doubt. He was already quite sluggish by round 2. See, he gives up a cheap takedown. Please tell me that that isn't going to be the fight. Oh wow, he gets reversed. And that's the thing, see man, if you're a low level on the ground against a guy like Ferreira, you got big problems. He gets reversed. Yeah, Rebecca might be really low level on the ground, man. That ain't a good thing against Carlos Diego Ferreira. He is kind of taking big deep breaths here. It's inconclusive. You could see it if a fighter's tired or not way easier on the feet, just by the way they move, their body language, their footwork, their hand speed. It's much harder on the ground to know how tired Rebecca is taking these big deep breaths. But if Ferreira were to get him in a position like this, he'd be in a lot of trouble. Obviously, this fight's 3 years ago as well, so he could have improved a lot since then. Like, you're not going to be winning scrambles like this against Ferreira even at 39 years old. You want to see a bit of striking, see if Rebecca's like breathing heavy and all that stuff. I think we're going to get it. That's the end of the fight. It doesn't really tell us much. Alright. Okay, next one. So I don't have this fight, which is annoying. I do have this fight. This fight could tell us a lot. It's a long time ago, but we're just trying to get clues as to what Rebecca's cardio is like. It's a bit inconclusive, but don't mind taking gambles in odds ranges like this, because if we had all the answers, Rebecca wouldn't be such a big favourite. Okay, so I think this website's a bit of a nightmare and does buffer a lot. Hopefully it doesn't. Oh, here we go. Alright. So it's going to be hard to skip through this one. Yeah, it's going to be hard. Alright, because it's going to be hard to skip through, let's just go to the point in the fight that we want. It's going to be midway through round 2. Right, here we go. So Rebecca is here, so we're looking at his breathing patterns, his footwork, his hand speed, body language. I know this fight was a long time ago, he could be a cardio machine now, but all we could do is make the best decision possible with the information that we've got available. This is unfortunately all we've got available. So he is moving well-ish, a little bit sloppy, but my real thing about Rebecca is if he mixes it up on the ground with Ferreira, he's probably going to find out real quick there's levels to the game. So that didn't tell us a whole lot. Skip through. Okay, they're back up. Cool, cool, cool. Because you got to think Ferreira is going to be scrambling like crazy on the ground, attacking, you know, rolling for legs, throwing up his legs, looking for cheeky back takes, initiating scrambles. You're not just going to lie on top of Ferreira like this. They back up. Look at the body language of Rebecca. Alright, now he's looking tired. Look at that little bounce there. Slips off. Look at this tired little bounce here coming up. It's coming. This is tired body language coming up right here. Hand speed is a lot slower now. About 2 minutes left to go in the round. Look at that little bounce. Very tired. Laboured kick. Slow hand speed. Sloppy movement. Yeah, he's tired here for sure. I know his cardio could have improved a lot. He's been training at ATT. But Ferreira is a massive underdog. Bad defensively. And the thing is, if Rebecca ends up on the ground with Ferreira when he's this sloppy and tired, Ferreira will just do terrible things to him on the ground. He's getting away with it against these guys because they're giving up cheap takedowns and they're quite low level and they're also tired. Ferreira, generally speaking, has pretty good cardio. Let's go into round 2. Please tell me he's not just going to give up a takedown. He does. He does. And it's over, what, very early in the round 2. Yeah, it's literally over right at the beginning of round 3. That's a shame. So yeah, Ferreira's definitely a bit of a gamble. Rebecca's gas tank is definitely inconclusive. We don't know if it's good or bad, but there are clues that it could be quite bad. There are clues that he might slow if this is a high-paced fight, which is likely to be. So what I want to show you is round 2
Brazilian of 3.5 inches.
Gamrot versus Ferreira. Because this first round is contested at a really high pace, so you can just skip through striking, there's grappling, there's takedown attempts, there's all kinds of shit going on. So Ferreira does have to burn through a decent amount of energy in round 1, but then I want to show you how sharp he looks in round 2. I also want to show you Ferreira's ground game very, very quick. Michael Johnson fight ended in round 2. I could show you that as well, but obviously the problem with the Michael Johnson fight is it's quite a slow paced fight where Ferreira doesn't exert much energy, so naturally he's not going to look as tired as a fight like this against Gamrot, which is contested at a much higher pace. You see Gamrot gets the takedown there, and Ferreira just working. And Gamrot recognises the danger, just lets him back up. But what we're focusing on is round 2. So you can see Ferreira's been forced to work quite hard. And again, Ferreira's one of these guys that when you see him get taken down, it's not a detrimental thing. It's not like a regular fighter getting taken down. He's at that Pantoja, Dern, Maya, Rani Yaya level where he wants to be taken down. He ain't even going to try and stuff a takedown. If Rebecca shoots a takedown on Ferreira, Ferreira will literally dive to his back because he wants to be on the ground. He backs himself because of how good of a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner he is. So here we go. So here we can see start of this second round, and just look at the footwork, the movement, the boxing of Ferreira. Compare it to what we've seen from Rebecca. He's a southpaw as well, makes him a little trickier. You can see he's very fresh, not showing any signs of being tired, right? He fights at a high pace, he keeps the pressure up. So my point being, if Rebecca does start to fade a little bit, does start to look a little bit sloppy, Ferreira's fresh enough and good enough everywhere to make him pay. Like you see him kind of pull guard there and roll for a leg. He's tricky on the ground. And when you look at how tired Rebecca was, if Rebecca starts getting into grappling exchanges with this guy, Rebecca could really tire out very quick because of how hard Ferreira's going to force him to scramble. And again, midway point of the round, Ferreira not even breathing heavy. Not even breathing heavily. Now look, he looks fresh, man. Very, very fresh. Doesn't have that raw power that Rebecca does, but he stays on Gamrot here. I think the real thing that I'm wanting to bet Ferreira for is that I could see Ferreira winning a scramble after being taken down and like taking Rebecca's back or getting on top of Rebecca. And I think with how much we've seen Rebecca slow when he's the aggressor in grappling positions, if Ferreira starts to out-grapple him and take the fight to him on the ground and win position, obtain dominant positions, I think that's where Ferreira can have a lot of success in this fight. And I think the difference in the ground game between these two is big enough where Ferreira could potentially give Rebecca utter hell on the ground. Like, look, this is 2 minutes left to go in round 2. He's not breathing heavy. He's still moving well. Still fighting at a high pace. Obviously, at the stage in Ferreira's career that he's at, that could change. You know, he might, his cardio might look a lot worse this weekend. Older fighters find ways to lose. But Ferreira looks all right here to me. Like, look how scrambly he is. And then there's just a weird ending where Gamrot knees into the body and then he's like, I'm fucked. I'm sorry, ref. It's over. He's like, I give up. It's done. And strange outcome, but we know these older fighters find ways to lose, which is why I don't like to bet on them. But he's a massive underdog, and I just think this fight is way closer to 50-50. So if we take a look at just the MJ fight very quickly.
A hater! Sleep!
Guys. And the fight does end pretty quickly in round 2. So, not ideal. As you can see in this second round, he still looks pretty sharp. Still moving well. No signs of slowing. This fight was contested at a way slower pace than the Gamrot fight. But I just don't think Ferreira's an easy fight for Rebecca. Which he should be, right? Rebecca is a 1.20, minus 500 favourite. You know, the implied probability on those odds is 83%. Would you really give Rebecca an 83% chance of winning based on what we've seen? Implied probability on Ferreira, average odds are about 4.75, 21%. I'd actually cap him as high as 40%. I think 30% at worst, which is a real nice margin of value over the bookies. Just bodies him. So yeah, boys, let me know what you think in Discord. Let me know what you think. Am I crazy? Let me know what you think. I do like the over 1.5 rounds on this fight. Both guys are very tough. Both guys are very durable. The only way I could see this fight, I'm not going to say the only way because anything can happen in MMA, but if this fight does end quick, I think it'll be Ferreira submitting Rebecca. I think they'll go to the ground, and the difference in ground games might be so huge that Ferreira just fucking puts Rebecca in a bad position he can't defend and subs him. I don't think a knockout is that likely early because both guys are very tough, both guys are very durable. Like we've already said, Ferreira's only been knocked out one time against Dustin Poirier. Very long time ago. That could change. He's 39 years old. His chin might decline very rapidly, but Ferreira's a tough fucker. So I am actually interested in the over 1.5 rounds. In terms of most likely outcomes, in terms of prop bets, I do like Ferreira by decision. 9.0, 10.0, plus 800, plus 900. I do quite like that. So, yeah. quite tempted by that myself. So if you do want to sprinkle a little bit of money on a prop to make watching the fight a bit more fun, I would go with Ferreira by decision. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I will see you in the next one. What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good day. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the fight between Alex Caceres and Sean Woodson. So obviously we have a bet on Sean Woodson this weekend. And if we take a look at the odds, we can see his odds have actually dipped a little bit since I bet him last night. So he's now down at an average of about, say, 1.46. Actually, they haven't dipped very much. They've dipped a little bit. 1.46, which is minus 217 for an implied probability of 68%. If we take a look at the odds on his opponent, Caceres, he's around an average of 2.80, which is going to be plus 180 for an implied probability of 36%. So Caceres is 35 years old, 5'10", with a 73.5-inch reach. Woodson, 31 years old, 6'2", with a 78-inch reach. So a couple of X factors in favour of Woodson here. So Alex Caceres is getting pretty old for a featherweight. You can see that this fight is in the featherweight division. And 35 years old, he's going to be 36 next month. It's very old for a featherweight. You know that the lighter weight classes are all about speed, reflexes and athleticism, which are some of the first things to go as you start to get older. So 36 for a featherweight is like a 37, 38-year-old, maybe like a middleweight. So getting pretty old. On top of that, he's had a lot of fights. You know, he's had, well over 30 pro fights. A lot of wear and tear, a lot of miles on the clock, taking a lot of damage, and obviously that will take its toll on his ability to perform to his full potential as well. He's also at that stage in his career where he's opened his own gym, I believe with his wife, which is always kind of a sign that a fighter is going to be declining as they move their attention away from their fighting career to, work on a business, which, as you know, if you own a business, takes a lot of work to keep any business performing well. So whenever you hear about fighters, open their own gym, it's always a bit of a distraction and usually leads to a dip in their performance. So with Caceres' age, the fact he's opened his own gym, the number of fights he's had, I would expect him to be declining from fight to fight. And on top of that, Woodson has a big size and reach advantage, a nice around about a 5-inch reach advantage, which means statistically he wins around 65% of the time, which is close to where his implied probability is on these odds before we even get into how they match up from a stylistic point of view. So in terms of how these two match up stylistically and why I think this is a good fight for Woodson, in fact, let's start off with the grappling. So I wouldn't expect there to be any grappling in this fight. Neither of these guys barely ever try and take the other down or try and take their opponents down. The only time you ever really see these guys go for takedowns is if they're hurt. They're both pretty bad on the ground, to be fair, but they're both quite difficult to take down. They both have reasonably good takedown defense, reasonably good balance. Woodson's a bit of a unicorn in that he is one of these guys that is abnormally long and tall for the division, but he is quite difficult to take down. Both guys are pretty bad on the ground, but I don't see the fight going to the ground. I think this is going to be a stand-up fight. Both these guys like to stand and strike. That's what they do. So one of the main reasons why I really like Woodson in this fight, even as such a big favourite, is because Alex Caceres' style of fighting is virtually identical to Charles Jourdain. But Charles Jourdain is a much better version of the style that both he and Caceres use in their fights. And I'll get onto that in a bit more detail in just a moment. But I also just want to say that this fight ended by split decision, which alludes to the possibility that this was a close fight. It wasn't. It was one of those wacky split decisions that should never have been a split decision, and Sean Woodson won the fight very, very clear. If we go to the fight on MMA decisions, you can see that literally every single MMA media person, apart from this fucking Dane Fox moron who's probably too busy playing Candy Crush on his phone to pay attention to the fight. As you can see, pretty much everyone scored the fight for Woodson. So even though it was a split, it wasn't a close competitive fight. Woodson won very comfortably. So this is the start of the reason why I think Woodson's a great bet here. I'm actually tempted to add another unit to Woodson and go 2 units, just because from my perspective, we've already seen him beat a much better version of Alex Caceres in Charles Jourdain and do it very comfortably. So, what is the style of Caceres and Jourdain? Why are they so similar as fighters? And then why is Jourdain better at that style than Caceres, right? And then you're going to start to understand the reasons why I think Woodson is such a good bet. Well, Caceres and Jourdain are very similar because they both have kicks-based styles of striking. Neither Caceres nor Jourdain are particularly good boxers. They have a very good kicking game, but their boxing isn't the best. And obviously with Woodson having his length and his reach, with Caceres and Jourdain already not being particularly good boxers, when you then come up against a very technical boxer like Woodson that has a lot of length, a lot of reach, and knows how to use it, it makes it very difficult for these guys who don't have particularly good boxing like Caceres and Jourdain to deal with the level of boxing that Woodson's bringing to the table. Now, of course, Jourdain and Caceres have a very nice kicking game, but so does Woodson, and it's not easy to get inside the length and reach even with those kicks. So Woodson is a very, 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 very good boxer. Caceres and Jourdain are not very good boxers. So when you throw the size and the reach into the mix as well, it just makes it a very difficult stylistic matchup for guys like Caceres and Jourdain who can't compete with the boxing. And that's a bit of a problem, because if you are going to be engaging in a stand-up fight with Woodson and you're not going to threaten the takedown, which Caceres probably isn't, Jourdain didn't, then you're basically being forced to kickbox against a far superior kickboxer. Now, that's the first reason why I like Woodson in this fight. But ultimately, Caceres and Jourdain very similar. They bounce around a lot, light on their feet. They don't really have particularly good boxing. They're more kicks-based style fighters. And Woodson handled Jourdain very, very easily. Used his length to great effect. And what's really cool about this fight for Woodson is that he's kind of doing back-to-back training camps for the same sort of opponent. So he's probably done like a 2-3 month training camp for Jourdain, and then in his very next fight, he's going to be doing a 2 to 3 month training camp for pretty much the same style. So I'd imagine Woodson's going to be very well prepared for this fight this weekend, because he's been training for a specific style for so long now and won't have to worry about being taken down, or shouldn't have to worry about being taken down. So where do Caceres... So why... So from my perspective, I really like Woodson in this fight because I've seen him cruise against Charles Jourdain, and I believe Jourdain to be the similar sort of fighter to Caceres, but a better version of it. So Woodson, this is kind of a step back for Woodson. I believe Caceres is an easier fight for Woodson than Charles Jourdain was. Why do I feel that way? Well, I do feel Jourdain's boxing is better than Caceres is. That's the first reason. The second reason is that Jourdain has true legit knockout power. So even though his boxing might not be the most technical, he can still crack. If he lands, he can hurt you. Whereas Caceres, even though he has knocked out a few guys in his career, for the most part, he's a volume striker. Jourdain's also a lot more aggressive than Caceres is. Jourdain will bite down on the mouthpiece, come forward and look to take the fight to you. Whereas Caceres is quite happy to just stay in that kickboxing range and have a nice point fighting contest. So I think Jourdain's better, more difficult to deal with than Caceres is. The only thing that makes me nervous about betting more on Woodson is that he does tend to get dinged a lot. We have seen him get rocked, wobbled and dropped, and this is one of the issues with guys that are abnormally long and tall. They are sometimes a little bit slow to react. But I'm not super worried about that with Woodson in this fight because, like I say, Caceres is more of a volume striker. If we take a look at his record, he does have the odd win by knockout here and there. There's one here. But for the most part, he is a bit of a decisionator, to be fair. Most of his fights do go quite deep. He's not that dangerous. And Woodson, is good defensively. He moves reasonably well. It's going to be difficult for Caceres to get inside that length and that reach. So yeah, basically that's the reason why I like Woodson in this fight. I think we've already seen him handle a much better version of Caceres quite easily in Jordan. He was quite dominant in that fight, in my opinion. And so this is a bit of a step backward. So I would expect Woodson to do really well this weekend. So I hope that makes sense to you. In terms of the over-under, it's quite likely this fight goes deep. We already spoke about how Caceres is a bit of a decisionator. He is tough. He is well-rounded. I don't think there's that much of a chance for a finish in this fight. I think it'll be a bit of a point-fighting kickboxing match in the middle of the octagon. I think Woodson will win. He's the better point-fighting kickboxer. So this fight is quite likely to go to a decision. I wouldn't bet that, though, because the odds are very, very, very steep. In terms of the props on this one, I think most likely outcome is Woodson by decision. I wouldn't bother betting that because the odds aren't much better than Woodson money line. So if you really, really, really want to bet this fight, just stick with Woodson money line. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Thank you very much for watching. Take care. I'll see you in the next. What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good day. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the fight between Waldo Cortez Acosta and Rebelis Despania. So if we start off by taking a look at the odds on this one, we can see that Despania is the favourite at average odds of around 1.41, which is going to be minus 244 for an implied probability of 71%. Take a look at the odds on Cortez Acosta. He's around an average of 3.0, which is going to be plus 200 for an implied probability of 33%. So Cortez Acosta, 32 years old, 6'4" with a 78-inch reach. Despania, 35 years old, 6'7" with an 87-inch reach. So we can see that Despania has a massive 9-inch reach advantage over Cortez Acosta, which statistically gives Despania about a 70% chance of winning, which is interesting because if we take a look at his odds, that's right about where the implied probability is on his odds. And if we look at what that size difference means at the ceremonial weigh-ins yesterday, you can see pretty big size advantage for Despania. For me, this is one of the deadest fights on the card for betting. I wouldn't touch this one personally if I were you, simply because this is one of those matchups where we're dealing with a guy in Despania that we really don't know anything about. He's 5-0, and every single one of his fights have ended in round 1. His last 4 fights have ended, in a combined total of less than 1 minute. So literally we're talking seconds. And he's only fought an extremely low level of opponent in his career. You look at the records, 0-0, 0-0, 0-0, 1-0. So I know he's big and scary. I know he's got a huge wingspan, maybe even the biggest wingspan in the history of the UFC. I know everybody is hyped up and excited about this guy. But for me, we don't know anything about him. He's very unproven. He could be the best heavyweight in the world. He could be the best. He could be the best heavyweight in the world. He could be the worst. We've got no idea. Got no idea what his gas tank is like. No idea how he's going to look in the second round of fights. No idea what his grappling looks like. So, he might be really good. He might not be really good. I don't want to bet to find out. Hopefully, we'll get to see this fight go deep. Hopefully, this week, this fight will go to a decision, and then the next time he fights, we'll know a bit more about him. In terms of what we do know about him, he's big, he's scary, he hits hard, he's explosive, he's athletic, he's fast for his size. We don't know anything about his takedown defense and ground game. At 6'7", I can't imagine it's very good. Guys that are abnormally long and tall usually have pretty bad takedown defense, but you never know. He might be a unicorn. His takedown defense might be really good. It probably won't matter in this fight, to be fair, because Waldo Cortez Acosta is, obviously purely a striker. He never tries to take his opponents down. So this should be a stand-up fight. Cortez Acosta's also got a good chin. He's very durable. So it'll be a lot harder for Despania to get him out of there compared to anyone that he's faced in the past. Cortez Acosta's got a much better chin, much more durable, much better cardio. He's just a tough guy. We've seen Cortez Acosta in a few wars now. It's no picnic when you face him. He took a lot of damage against Marcos Rogerio de Lima, took a lot of damage. We know how dangerous de Lima is. So yeah, this fight is very dead for betting. We know Cortez Acosta's got a decent jab, decent leg kicks. He doesn't really have much power in his hands. He's more of a volume striker. So this is one of those fights where Despania is going to be tested. Because like I say, it won't be easy for him to get Cortez Acosta out of there. He probably will be dragged into deep waters. And we'll see how he looks, man. A guy that moves like this, that is as big as this, usually can't fight that effectively for very long without getting very tired. So let's see what the Spaniard's gas tank is like. With that being said, what does all this mean from a betting point of view? You'd have to be a lunatic. You'd have to be insane, in my opinion, to bet Rebellis as a big favourite. We just don't know anything about him. You'd be better off betting on a guy from the bar to win a UFC fight. Like, we don't fucking know. This guy could be best guy in the world, worst guy in the world. We just don't know. Don't know enough about him yet. Not enough footage available on him. So if you really, really want to gamble, you want to bet this fight, you want to make watching this fight more interesting, you have to take the underdog Cortez Acosta. We know a lot more about him. He's got good cardio, decent leg kicks, decent jab. He's got a good chin. He's a tough test for the Spaniard. And it will be very interesting to see how this one goes. So, yeah, this is clearly dog or pass. In terms of the over-under on this one, we can see that the over is set at underdog odds at over 1.5 rounds. I'm actually very tempted by the over 1.5 rounds on this fight because Cortez Acosta is a bit of a decisionator. He's not that aggressive. He's not that dangerous on the feet. He's more of a volume striker. And he's tough. He's got a good chin. So when Despania comes out all guns blazing, I think Cortez Acosta is tough enough to weather the early storm. And then I also think what's pretty interesting is that Cortez Acosta is not crazy dangerous. So it's not like the Spaniard is going to be in tons of danger if he can't get Cortez Acosta out of there early. He might be. His cardio might be the worst cardio of all time. But yeah, I'm probably going to bet the over 1.5 rounds. I think people are overhyping this guy. I think he could be very good. He could be the best heavyweight in the world. But I mean, look at the records of the guys he's been facing, man. Dreadful, absolutely dreadful. We don't know anything about him. An 18-second knockout over Parisian doesn't really tell us much. Won't be as easy to do that against Cortez Acosta, who's never been knocked out. Obviously, you know, the Spaniard's big and scary and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think this is one of those fights where dog or pass, the over's interesting to me. In terms of the props on this one, I would go for, I don't really see the point. So I was going to say Cortez Acosta to win by knockout at TKO just based on the fact that I do think the Spaniard's cardio probably isn't great. And I do think there's a chance that it could reach a point in this fight where the Spaniard will be too tired to defend himself, and that's where Cortez Acosta could get a stoppage with strikes, even though he doesn't really have knockout power. He could just, you know, force the Spaniard to kind of quit when he's too tired to defend himself. So I do like that. I do like that. But the odds aren't that much better than Cortez Acosta straight. So you're probably just better off betting Cortez Acosta straight if you really want to gamble. But I do like the over 1.5 rounds. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I will see you in the next one. What's up, guys? Hope you're having a good day. In this video, we're going to be breaking down the fight between Esteban Ribovics and Terence McKinney. And obviously, we do have a cheeky little bet on Mr. Ribovics to win this week. So let's start off by taking a look at where his odds are currently at. Let's take a look. Okay, so his odds have declined a little bit since we bet him. So he's currently around an average of about 1.60. Which is going to be minus 167 for an implied probability of 63%. And if we take a look at the odds on McKinney, we can see he's around an average of, say, 2.40, which is going to be plus 140 for an implied probability of 42%. So Ribovics, 28 years old, 5'10", with a 69-inch reach. McKinney, 29 years old, 5'10", with a 73.5-inch reach. So we can see both guys about the same age, about the same size. McKinney with a bit of a reach advantage, but nothing too major going on there. So we spend a lot of time in these breakdown videos discussing technique and how guys match up stylistically in, you know, different areas the fight could take place. And that is really important. I think that is the foundation for betting on this sport, just understanding, you know, how both fighters match up in every position this fight could take place in, or any fight could take place in. But every once in a while, you run into a fight where I don't think skills are that important. I think the other stuff that goes into fighting is going to be the difference. The mentality, the heart, the determination, the will to win. And this is very much one of those fights for me. To be honest with you, I can't name a single thing that Ribovics does better than Terence McKinney from a technical point of view. Possibly pure boxing, but outside of that, McKinney from a technical point of view is better than Ribovics everywhere. So why is Ribovics the favourite, and why are we betting him this weekend? Well, it's because of the old quote we've got from George St. Pierre, where he famously said that fighting was 90% mental. Fighting's a mental game. The highest level of the sport is usually a mental game. And in this fight, we've got a situation where Ribovics is extremely mentally strong. We've seen him, dig deep in 2 absolute wars in his first 2 fights in the UFC. He's fought through adversity. He's come back from losing positions. And against McKinney, we've got a guy that is really lacking in the mental game and will cave mentally very easily as soon as the fight gets tough. So, in terms of how these two match up stylistically, Ribovics has got really bad takedown defense and a low-level ground game. McKinney has got good offensive wrestling, good grappling control, dangerous submissions. Early in the fight, I think McKinney's going to be able to get Ribovics to the ground and cause him big problems. And on the feet, we know that McKinney has got true legit knockout power in every limb in his body. He's fast, he's explosive, he's very, very dangerous on the feet. McKinney early in fights is very, very dangerous. But as we know with McKinney, if you can just weather that early storm, drag him into the second round, he starts to cave mentally. He's one of these guys that is almost like, if you're still in there with him after a few minutes, you almost see like a look of panic on his face, like, shit, I can't believe you're still here, sort of thing. And so this is one of those fights where, while McKinney, from a technical point of view, can cause Ribovics problems everywhere, there's no doubt about that. My question would be, for how long can he cause him problems everywhere? Because Ribovics is one of these guys that never quits, never stops pushing, never stops trying hard to work out a bad position. He's mean, he's nasty, he's aggressive, he likes to drag you into a brawl. And even though he also fades as fights wear on, when fights get mean and tough and nasty and difficult and grueling, this is almost the point in the fight where Ribovics really turns it on and starts to look at his best, just because he's a warrior, he's scrappy. And typically speaking, these are the kind of fighters that guys like Terence McKinney will struggle against, because if he can't get Ribovics out of there early, he's not going to be able to dig as deep as Ribovics and outwork him in that second and third round when both guys are tired, both guys are hurt, and they both need to dig deep to get the fight over the line. So I do think the first round will be dicey for Ribovics. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of McKinney submitting Ribovics or knocking him out. But if Ribovics can make it through that first round, I think he'll be too damn tough, too damn determined for Terence McKinney. And that's why I like him in this fight. So in terms of the over-under on this one, it's a tricky one, man. Oh, one more thing that I've got to say about this fight that I forgot to mention. What makes me really like Ribovics in this fight from a betting point of view is that we have seen Terence McKinney try to fix his gas tank. We've tried to see him, approach fights differently and pace himself differently in fights. And for that reason, I don't think it's like a physical thing with McKinney. I think it's a mental thing. You can see in all of his fights where his opponents have weathered that early 3, 4, 5 minute storm. Even when he hasn't exerted that much energy in the first 3, 4, 5 minutes, you can see like in his face the disappointment that they're still in there, and kind of like he starts to doubt himself. So this is one of those matchups where it's a very, very interesting fight. Sorry guys, my camera is going crazy. It's a very, very interesting fight, and let me just check the position of this camera. There we go. Yeah, it's a very interesting fight, and hopefully Ribovics gets over the line for us and gets it done. In terms of the over-under, it's a tough one. Looking at the odds, my lean would be over 1.5 rounds, just because Ribovics is more of a volume striker, doesn't have major power. You can see as soon as he started facing a higher level of opponent, his fight started to go the distance after all these quick finishes, but he is aggressive. McKinney does have a tendency to cave as soon as the going gets tough. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this fight end quickly, but the odds are steep, and I think the over 1.5 rounds actually gives you the better risk to reward ratio. I won't bet in myself because I don't trust Terence McKinney. You know, I think if he got hurt in this fight or tired, he will cave very quick. But I do think the over 1.5 rounds gives you the better risk to reward ratio. In terms of the most likely outcome on this, I believe is Ribovics by knockout or TKO. I believe that he will probably, he does have the killer instinct in him. When his opponents are tired and hurt, he does go for the finish. I think it'll likely reach a point in this fight where McKinney's too tired to defend himself, and that's when Ribovics could probably get him out of there. But the odds are absolutely terrible. They're not that much better than Ribovics money line, so I don't see the point in betting that prop. You're better off just taking Ribovics money line. The only other prop that I could think of going for would possibly be like Ribovics in round 2. I doubt the fight will go to the 3rd round. Maybe Ribovics in round 2. Outside of that, nothing too interesting to me on this one. So I hope you found that breakdown useful. Thank you very much for watching. Take care, and we will see you in the next